Good morning again. So we did want to also thank you. Last month was Pastor Appreciation Month, and even today we have some more things in our basket. So thank you guys so much for just appreciating us, and we just love. And I know it's October is kind of the month, but we really feel appreciated. So many of you send us nice notes, and just all year we just really feel appreciated, and just so thankful to be able to serve the Lord through you guys through here. So thank you so much. So we are in our second week of Ruth. And this is one of my favorite books of the Bible. And if you were here for our Dream Team huddle this morning, you know, and if you were here last week, do you remember what kind of movie I said that the book of Ruth was? You can just shout it out. Anybody remember? A rom-com movie, that's right. And we were able to look at some famous lines this morning. Well, I have some things to help you this morning. This is just our first part here is for those of you who are single today. Okay? No matter how old, how young you are, just this first part is here because I know if you are a faithful follower of Christ and you want to get married, not everybody needs to get married, but you want to get married, that you want to have a good marriage. So we have to start it off right. And so maybe you're in church one day and the pastor says, hey, we need somebody to help set up some chairs. Or you're in life group one day stirring up some spaghetti for your meal, and you just look at that person that's stirring, and you just look them up and down, and you think, that is the whole package. I see Christ in her. That is what I want. Well, I got the special lines for you today. If you are ready and you are willing to take that next step with somebody, but you're just not sure how to do it, I've got some special lines just for you. And just to let you know, two things. When I was working on these this week in my office, I was cracking myself up in my office, just so you know that. Secondly, I have definitely made sure that Pastor Stacy has all of these lines that I'm going to give you today, and she loves them so much. So first one, you can walk up to that special guy that you see, or girl, and say, is it hot in here? Or is that just the Holy Spirit burning inside you? A good one. Okay, this could be for either or for guys or girls. You must be a Bible verse because I want to memorize you. Okay, here's one just for the girl. Well, it's for the boys, but for a girl. Go up and say, hey, is your name Faith? Because you are the substance of all things I have ever hoped for. Another one for the guys. But you can't use this one on my daughter, though. Is your name Grace? Because you are amazing. Okay, you ready for just a couple more? These are good, right? A couple more. Okay. One. This is for the girls. This is especially. This is the one that I told Pastor Stacy she's got to pull out. She's got to pull out on the next guy. You must be Jonah, because I'm totally swallowed by your love. And the last one, this one's a little bad, but I thought it was funny. You must be a follower of Christ because you've got me cross-eyed. That's a little bad. But trust me, keep those. If you want some more, I can send you some more. You'll thank me later. But for real, relationships today, those of you who are single and looking, can be really tough today. For the first time in my life, the majority of people in the United States, the majority of adults in the United States, are not married. So that's people 18 and over. So, and I actually looked this up to make sure. It says that there are approximately, of 18 and over, there are 124 million married adults. and 126 million unmarried adults. So that could be either single, never been married, divorced, widowed, but there are more single adults today than there are married adults. And over the last 50 years, marriage rates in the United States have dropped 60%. So that is huge. 63% of the men under the age of 30, between 18 and 30, are choosing to remain single. And 77% of people prefer to live with their partner before marriage. Now, this has been something that we've talked about before, living with your partner before marriage. But what I find really interesting is that today, when most people are asked why they are living with their partner before they're married, the number one, by a huge majority, answer is finances. Because the economy is so bad, it's hard to live separately. And so looking at all of those things, I want to say that Paul says in the Bible that marriage is not for everyone. So I'm not out here trying to get anyone that's single married, but we can see for those that do want to get married, that something's going on with marriage. It's not looking like it used to look. But we're still just kind of doing the same thing that we've always done and getting the same results that we've always gotten. So I want us to look today. If you do what most people do, you'll get what most people get. And this is not just on the subject we're talking about today. This kind of is a broad idea that if you just keep doing what everybody else does, I remember Ronnie actually saying this when we talked at the beginning of the year about health in our bodies, that if you just keep doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, then you're going to have to be satisfied with what everybody else is getting. But this is so true in our relationships. So today we're going to try to look at a different approach. And we're going to look at finding the love that you want. Now, I know a lot of us here today are already married or already in relationships. So I don't want you to check out. Because even though we talked at the beginning about those that are single, hopefully if you are married or in a relationship, you want your relationship to grow even better. You want to grow closer to Christ. You want to be the person that you want to be married to, that you want to be in a relationship with. So this isn't just for people who are looking to be married. This is to people who are already in relationships. So let's do a quick review of last week. Last week, all we looked at was the very first chapter of Ruth. Now, Ruth and her husband and her 2 sons, they were just an ordinary family who were living in Bethlehem. And there was a famine in Bethlehem, which means there was no food. So the dad, Elimelech, got really scared and wanted to take care of his family. And so he moved his family to another city called Moab. Now, what we learned last week is the city of Moab was a city that God had said long ago for the Israelites to stay away from. It was a city that was actually started by incestual relations. They worshiped a false god. They would actually sacrifice their children to this god. It was a place that God had said, you are supposed to stay away from that place. It is a bad place. Do not go there. But Elimelech, the father, in all his just anxiousness of trying to take care of his father, disregarded what God said and moved his family to Moab. And unfortunately, while their family was in Moab, Elimelech, the father, died. The 2 sons married Moabite women, and they both died. So their family, besides the mom, Naomi, was wiped out by their move. And so in that time period, we talked about this a little bit last week. In that time period, if you were a woman, a widow, there was really nothing for you. Your husband was the one who had the job. He was the one that owned the property. He was the one that could work. So if you were a widow, you were just it was up to other people to take care of you. And especially if you had no sons or family to take care of you. So the two daughters-in-law, remember they're both Moabite women, they're both from this country. One left and stayed in her country. We didn't hear from her again, but Naomi said, get married again, follow your own God. But Ruth in 1:16 says to Naomi, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. So Ruth, this Moabite woman, decided to follow her mother-in-law back to Bethlehem and to follow her God, Yahweh. Now remember, if you were not here last week, we always post on our YouTube channel, which is just the Well at Melody Hill, so you can go back and look at that. Read over chapter 1, look at what we talked about, because we talked a lot of background last week. So, Naomi and Ruth return to Bethlehem. They're still homeless. They're hopeless. They don't have anything. And I want you to think about that. We kind of ended last week. We talked about how some of us we were in Bethlehem. We were following God. And we disregarded what he said. And we left and turned our own way. And we went to Moab. And we talked about what our Moab is. Where is the place that you have left God and gone to? And we worked a lot last week talking about how we're going to leave that place and leave it behind and come back to Bethlehem, just like Naomi and Ruth did. So today, in chapter 2, we're starting with Naomi and Ruth back in Bethlehem, back with God, back in the place that they're supposed to be. But nothing has changed yet. Because of the decisions that they made in Moab, they still are homeless. They still feel like they're hopeless. And I want you to think about, as we start chapter 1, as we finish chapter 1 and start chapter 2, I want you just to kind of visualize in your head to turn the page. And I want you to think about that in your own life. If you felt last week and God really placed on your heart to leave Moab, to leave the things that you are doing, to think about the places that you went, the things that you did that were away from him, and you're coming back to Bethlehem, I want you to turn that page. Because it might feel like you've spent a long time there. You might have some regrets. You might have some scars. You might have some things that you have felt like, I just can't get out. All of that is still there. But I want you to know, just like with Naomi and Ruth that we're going to read today, that God is going to turn that page. When you come back to him, or if you've come to him for the first time, that God is turning that page in your life, and you're going to go a new direction. So we're going to start right at the beginning of chapter 2. Now, Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. Now, Boaz means strong man. And for us, whenever we first picture Boaz, and sometimes I even looked up some images and things of what people think of Boaz, they always show this big, muscly man, and they didn't wear tight t-shirts, but think of, in a little tight toga maybe or something, that he saw. But that's not necessarily what it says. It never actually talks about Boaz's look and what he actually physically looks like. It just says that he was a man of standing. That means he had an internal strength. He had character. He had integrity. It also means he had money and property. And for those of you that are single, especially if you're women, look for a man that has a job and has a little bit of money. That's what we're looking at. So we don't actually know what he looked like, but he was a man of standing. He had some character. So let's keep reading. It says, and Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone whose eyes I find favor. Naomi said to her, go ahead, my daughter. So Ruth went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. So what does that mean to us? That doesn't make a lot of sense. But way back in Leviticus 19, which is kind of a book that's a lot of laws and rules, God told the Israelites whenever the farmers would get their wheat and get all their things from the field, to leave a little bit for the people that would come through, for the widows, for the orphans, for the poor to be able to come through and get kind of the extras that were left over. And so that was a law that they followed, to leave some. So that's what Ruth was doing. Ruth was going into this field that was Boaz's, and she was kind of getting the extra that was there to help her and her mother-in-law. And it was God's way of caring for them. So let's keep reading. Ruth went out to gather grain behind the harvesters. And as it happened, she found herself working in a field that belonged to Boaz, the relative of her father-in-law, Elimelech. And I just love that. It just so happened. As it happened, and I thought about that with our video today, that some of us are just so happened to be placed in the jobs that we're placed in, just so happened to be placed in the neighborhoods that we're placed in. And that just so happened, I think, is kind of like a little wink from God, because nothing in our lives is a just so happened. In the book of Ruth, there's no big miracles that we see kind of in other places. There's no, burning bush. There's no where the sea is parted or raising from the dead or anything like that. There's not that huge idea of the miracles kind of that we think about. But while we don't see those big supernatural miracles, we do see the supernatural providence of God that is working kind of behind the scenes in everything. And the providence of God is when God uses natural circumstances to bring about his supernatural plans. And I think we see that so much, and sometimes we disregard that. So there are natural things that are happening. You get a new job. You have a new family move in next to you. Someone new comes to church and sits beside you. These things that naturally happen that we don't see as these big miracles. But God uses those natural things to bring about his supernatural plans. So remember last week when we said that this was a rom-com? So we are getting ready for the best part of the rom-com. This is the meet cute. This is when Boaz and Ruth are going to meet up. Now Ruth is coming in. She is at her lowest. Her husband has died. She has left the country that she was raised in. She has taken on a new family, a new God, a whole new community, and she's coming in and she has nothing. And so she's in there. She's just looking for something, for someone to save her. And enters the handsome hero, Boaz, the man of standing. And he comes in. And like I said, we don't know exactly what he looks like. He could be ugly, but he has a job, and he has property. And he has eyes for her. So in chapter 1, we want to know why did this just so happen? So we say that it's the providence of God, but why did it happen? Well, back in chapter 1, Naomi prayed for Ruth because she realized she had told Ruth, just like the other sister-in-law, she had told Ruth to stay back with her sister-in-law in Moab. You don't need to follow me, because she was a Moabite. But Naomi followed her. Ruth followed Naomi. So Ruth was covered in prayer by Naomi. And Naomi prayed, "May the Lord show you kindness. May the Lord bring you a husband." And I think that is so important because some of those just so happen because somebody has been praying for them. So pray for the things that you need in your life. Pray for the things that other people need in their lives. You don't have to pray for somebody to have a husband, but that's what Ruth needed in her life at that time. She needed a husband in that culture to really survive. So that's what Ruth prayed for. So Ruth is out there I just like to imagine it. She's, just working in the field. She's gleaning. She's doing it for her, but she's also doing it for her mother-in-law. She's helping her mother-in-law. So she's gleaning in the fields. And this is when she first meets Boaz. We're looking at Ruth chapter 2, verse 4. While she was there, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem. And I know that's a little confusing because they're in Bethlehem, but his farm was kind of out, like on the outskirts of the city. So he was a man that had been in the city and taking kind of care of business and things. So they're still in Bethlehem, but he had arrived from that center circle from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you," he said. "The Lord bless you," the harvesters replied. So the very first thing, when we first meet Boaz, the first thing that we hear him talk about is who? Who did he just talk about? The Lord. He just talked about the Lord. That's the first thing that comes out of his mouth. And for us, the things we talk about the most are what is most important to us. I have a daughter, Grace, that most of you know. She's 19 years old, and she is in Bloomington right now at IU. But anytime she comes home, or before she went to college, she has this way of not talking to you the whole day, and then about 11:30 at night, she pops in and decides she wants to spill everything in her whole life at 11:30 at night. I don't know if you guys have kids around that same age that do that. Well, if you have spoken to Grace for more than 5 minutes, she will tell you something about F1 racing. She is absolutely obsessed with F1 racing. 3 years ago, I honestly don't even think I knew that F1 racing existed. I knew there were like cars and stuff, but I didn't know. Now, I can tell you the lore of who's dating who had whose kid, who's leaving what team to go to the next team. She even one time, because I got it confused, one time she even just while she was talking to me, wrote it all up on her iPad, screenshotted it, and sent it to me so I could have like the whole thing. So she loves F1 racing. So that is the first thing that comes out of her mouth at most times. When you are meeting someone new, when you are looking for a relationship, or if you are already in a marriage or a committed relationship, think about what you talk to your spouse or the person you're in the relationship with the most. What comes out of their mouth the most? And if it's not God, then that's a conversation that you need to have. If you start dating a person or you start, thinking about talking to a person, if they don't talk about God, then you need to move on. In your relationships, God has got to be the center of that relationship, because if you don't talk about him, you don't care about him. If you don't include him and make him the most important thing in all the decisions that you make, then your relationship is not going to be where it needs to be. You're going to end up back in Moab or going over to Moab because you are not following what he wants you to be doing. So that is our first thing, is just to make sure if you're looking for someone new, make sure their conversations are about God. If you're in a relationship, make your conversations about God. If they're not, already about God, start doing that. It might sound kind of weird because sometimes it's kind of cheesy. Like, we'll talk about different things, what did God do in your life today? What did God, how has God helped you out? And you might just look at each other like, oh, I don't know. But think about some of those providence things that we just talked about. Are there things, when you start opening your eyes and looking for him, are there things that you feel like God has put in your life that aren't the big burning bush moments, but there's something little that you're like, I really think that God had me meet this person at Walmart today because I started talking to them and I was able to pray with them, or I was able to make them smile because of something that I said. Open your eyes to those moments. Now, Boaz, he is not a priest. He's not a prophet. His job is as a farmer. And so he is not what we would think of as in full-time ministry. But I'm here to tell you, as someone who gets paid to be in what we think of as full-time ministry, your job, if you are a Christian and you love God, you are in full-time ministry. Whatever job God has placed you in, if that is as a parent, a stay-at-home parent, that is your job. That is what God has placed you in. So every person sitting here is in full-time ministry because that is your job, is to talk about him and share others with him. So while serving, Boaz just so happens to notice Ruth. Now, on paper, she was not the woman that you would think someone would want. She was a Moabite. Remember, they were not supposed to be connected to Moabites. She had worshipped this false god, Shemash. She was widowed. She wasn't a virgin. She was homeless. She was destitute. And she came with a grumpy mother-in-law, Naomi. So it was not the person that you would think that he would be interested in. She had a complicated past. And I know a lot of us have a complicated past today. We have things that have happened either to us or because of things that we have done our own. But Ruth did not let her past define her. It prepared her for what God wanted her to do. Remember, we're turning that page. We're not going to let what we've done or what has happened to us define us. It's preparing us for what God has for us. Let's keep going. We're going to look at Ruth chapter 2, verses 5 to 7. Then Boaz asked his foreman, "Who is that young woman over there? Who does she belong to?" And the foreman replied, "She is the young woman from Moab who came back with Naomi. She asked me this morning if she could gather grain behind the harvesters, and she has been hard at work ever since." So Boaz notices Ruth. They haven't actually talked, they haven't met yet, but these are some of the things that he notices about her. First, she is faithful to God. He's heard about her. She has left her God that was in Moab, and now she is following Ruth's God. She's here following the one true God. Secondly, she's loyal to her family. She stayed with Naomi when she did not have to. It would have been fine for her to stay in Moab, but she was loyal and stayed with her family. She's a hard worker. She took initiative. She's the one out there gathering that grain for herself and her mother-in-law. And the last one is a little strange, but it says she honors God morally. And the reason he notices this is because a lot of widows at that time, young widows at that time, would have actually become prostitutes. That was something that they did in their culture. If they were young and still beautiful and they needed money, they would have become prostitutes. And so she did not do that. She's working hard in this field, and so she's honoring God morally. So he saw all of those things about her. And let's look at what happens next. Boaz went over to Ruth, so they're finally meeting. "Listen, my daughter, stay right here with us when I gather the grain. Don't go to any other fields. I have warned the young men not to treat you roughly. And when you are thirsty, help yourself to the water they have drawn from the well." So Boaz protects her integrity. He keeps people from sexually harassing her. And that sounds bad, but that's what, she's this beautiful woman, that's not married in this field. And the people that are around might not be the best people. And so he had told them, leave her alone. And what's the most important is in verse 12, he even prays for her. So the first time he meets her, he prays for her. In verse 12, he says, "May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." So we looked at the qualities that Boaz saw in Ruth, but now Ruth is meeting Boaz. This is her first time she's seen him. And let's look at some of the things. Remember, he's a man of standing. What are some qualities that she notices in him? He honors her. He protects her. He kept the riffraff away from her and told them to leave her alone. He provides for her. He's generous. He said, he didn't have to allow her to drink also. And he said, hey, we've got water for the people that work here. Drink our water too. You can have as much as you want. And then he prays for her. So looking at both of those things, the qualities of Ruth and the qualities of Boaz, I want you to think about if you have those qualities yourself. Are those the qualities that you put into your relationship? Reading on, at mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here, have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar." When she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate it, all she wanted, and she had some left over. So we are a lot like Ruth. Ruth was a Moabite who had sinned against God. And we've all sinned against God, and we have fallen short of the glory of God. So I want us to think about that and just let that sit sometimes, because sometimes we think about the things that we are, the things that God does for us in our life, but that's the first thing, is that she came from Moab, and she had nothing to give. And that is how we are. We come sinful. We have nothing to give. She came empty-handed. And we have nothing to give to God. And everything that we have that are things that God has given us. I want you to think about the things that you have in your life. They can be your friends, your family, your house, the material things that you have. But everything that we have in our lives have been given to us from God. And that's so important for us to remember. When we talk about tithing, when we talk about giving things back from God, everything is already God's. He has already given us everything. And that's what Boaz is doing for Ruth. And one more thing that he does is he says, "Come and sit at my table." Now, this was not something that they would give to all of the people that were gleaning at that time. When we think about Ruth, it's not like Ruth was the only person in that field gleaning. That was what was done all of the time. That was a law for the Israelites to leave things. So people would be coming and going. But he picked out Ruth and he said, "Ruth, I see these qualities in you. Come and sit at my table." And that's exactly what God does for us. God says, "Come and sit at my table." And the way that we come and sit at the table with God is through communion. And this morning we're going to have communion together. And when he asks us to come and sit with him, he's saying that he's going to share what he has with us. And he shared the most important thing that he had with us. What we see as the Last Supper, what we base our communion on, it was right before he gave his life for us. And so when we sit at the table right now with God, we are thanking him for what he did for us. We are thanking him for his broken body. We are thanking him for the blood he shed. And I was talking about heaven with somebody this morning. when we get to heaven, there's going to be a big banquet where we're going to sit at his table again, but he's going to be there, and he's going to share everything he has, and we're going to be able to celebrate with him the life that he has given us. So we're going to go ahead together and share communion right now.